Hello, this is Goddess7 with another tutorial with a special guest today.
Hello there, it's me, NdyMario.
Yeah, and today we're going to show you how to make your own levels for Super Mario 64 DS by modeling, of course. Now, first thing you're going to need is the model pack right here, which I will put in the description, of course, as always. Now, just extract it to wherever you want and open it. First step, install Sketchup. So let's do that. You see an installer, you can just run that. However, for some
Decided to get the Spanish instead of English version.
Yeah, I don't know, this is the best one I could find, but I know Spanish, so just stick with me and you'll be fine. Siguiente, excepto los términos de este acuerdo de licencia. Siguiente, no cambiar, no cambiar. Siguiente, siguiente, instalar. In case you didn't know, this says installation of Google Sketchup 8, although it's probably obvious, and I actually do know Spanish. I'm not making that up. No check R, no click R, or I don't know the word for that, but no checking that, and you can just finalize R right here, or to finalize us, or finalize us. Yes, to finalize.
Click the button that means finish in Spanish.
Okay. Okay, now once you got Sketchup 8 installed, you're going to need to open the model pack and copy these two files right here. Go to your C drive, Program Files 86, Google Sketchup 8, and plugins, or wherever you installed it. Just paste them in there. Do this all for current items and hit continue. After it finishes, you can finally open Sketchup 8. Okay, so to start off using SketchUp, use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out. Hold the mouse wheel to orbit, hold shift and the mouse wheel to pan. Use the cursor to select. Hit delete to delete things, like that person right there. Now, you can just select the rectangle tool and just draw a rectangle for the sake of this tutorial. Just a simple rectangle. You want to make sure that the top is going to be white for now. Make sure that top is white. You can see this one is like a darker bluish gray, but this one is white. So you can make some, I don't know, some things by just doing that. Obviously this is just a tutorial and you would probably not do that. You can also use cylinders if you really want to, although they don't really fit the Super Mario 64 style. You can use them though, no problem. Now, once you finish your model, you can see that I finished mine here. Just double check that everything looks white on the outside. And once it is, you can just highlight everything by hitting Control A and hit right click and hit reverse faces. Now, just double check for a second that everything is like that dark bluish, grayish kind of color, because this is important for the next step here. And now let's actually get into texturing. So hit the paint bucket. Now you could add your own materials by like adding some images, but right now I'm going to use some of this Sketchup stuff here. So I'm just going to use some pre-selected textures. Basically, how you do this is you just left click on the plane you want color. Pretty simple, pretty simple. Let me just double check that this inside is colored. Yes, it is. And you never want to texture these white faces. I hope if you do, I don't think it really matters, but I would just try and avoid it for just in case, just in case. Keep on checking that everything is like bluish. If you're unsure, you can always reverse places and see that's lighter than what it is before, so I know it wouldn't be right. If you accidentally do something, hit escape or Control Z, it'll usually fix it. Make sure you texture all the planes that are visible. If not, it may look a little ugly. Sometimes it can be a little hard to get a good view of the plane you want to paint. If you get stuck, just zoom out and that usually fixes it. Remember to use pan and zoom a lot. And orbit, they're really helpful for this. Now it's time to do this last part. Just double check that's grayish. Alright, now once the fence is done, you'll see that like the ground doesn't really match and stuff, so maybe go in the ground. Remember to zoom in close enough. And the ground should be painted well. But you see we forgot this part here. Now just double check that this is the part like this you need to worry about. Oh, nope. See? You always want to do Control Z if you mess up. Now this is the whiter side. Okay, so that means this side is correct. Now let's go to this side over here. Now this side looks wider. Now let's paint it. And the model should be good about now. Once you're happy about how it's painted, don't worry about lines and stuff. Those won't show in game now. I don't think lines will show in game. Because I think it just exports faces and not the actual lines themselves. So you can just X out textures once you're done. Don't forget to save. And now, here's the thing. With how the OBJ exporter, it kind of exports in reverse. And remember, if you do mess up with a texture, you can just select it and hit remove all materials. And just paint it with the material you want. But now, in order to get this to look correctly in game, we actually need to highlight everything by hitting Control A, right click, and hit flip along, and you'll see that most of this is along the green axis right there. You want to say flip along green direction. And you would see that the whole thing is mirrored, but don't worry, that's okay, because that's in order to get it to show up correct in game. And now you want to go to Plugins, OBJ Exporter. And now let me browse to where I want this thing. And you don't want to check this, you want to check these two ones. These are the ones you want to check, because the back faces are the ones with the texture. The gray dark faces are back faces. Now if you did the white faces and didn't flip them like I said, then I guess you could do the front faces. Although in Super Mario 64 you usually want the back faces, so I would just do this. And now, once you're done, you just hit export OBJ file. Then once it's done, you can extract it. Okay, now, in the next tutorial, I say how to import this model, or your model. But first, we're not done yet. You see, these textures, they're great and all, but they're not exactly Super Mario 64 friendly. So let's open it with GIMP. Now this texture, you see, we're going to go to Image, Scale Image, and we're going to type in 32, enter, and hit Scale. And you'll see we shrank our image, then hit Image, Mode, Indexed. Then just hit Convert, then hit Control E. Then you want to type here BMP, and hit this scroll bar here, select BMP image. Then hit export, then hit this right X here, don't worry, hit discard changes, then drag the next image in. We're going to do the same thing, scale image, 32, scale, image, mode, indexed, convert, Control E, make sure BMP is selected, type in BMP, and hit export. And now we reached a PNG image. Now, ones with transparent backgrounds, they're going to be similar. Like you do the scaling, just the same. Except, after you do the indexed mode, you can still convert it. But one thing we're going to do is hit, when we export it, we're going to leave it as the PNG. And this is because BMPs can't save transparency. Now you could just use PNGs for everything, but I prefer to use BMP, just for reasons, I don't know, just in case the editor doesn't like too many PNGs. Okay, and now when we reach this one, you'll realize that it's not actually a perfect square, so I'm just going to open it with paint.net real quick, because GIMP, to me, doesn't really like selecting that well. Now, the width of this is, if I look down here, 281, and that number right here tells us the width and height selected. So I'm going to do 281 by 281 as in like this, then I'm just going to assume that it repeats perfectly. Now you don't have to scale your images to a square, like it could be a 32 by a 64, but obviously this isn't enough because it's 500. And so it can rather be a 2-to-1 ratio or a 1-to-1. And since I can't do 2-to-1 here, I'll stick with 1-to-1. And now I can just crop to selection. And let me just save. Control S, hit OK. Okay. Now once that's done, I can now open that image with GIMP and scale it to the correct 32 by 32. I'm going to also adjust the transparency of this texture right here because it's water and it's going to be see-through. So I'll make it like 78.3 or something in mode indexed convert. Although indexed images don't seem to look like they keep the transparency, but it may or may not do it in game. Once this is done, you can do File, no, sorry, Control E, and then save your PNG. Then just exit GIMP. And you'll see that we finished all the textures here. Now, even though we got the new textures, we need to tell the model to use these new textures. So how do we do that? We right-click it and edit it with our favorite notepad editing program. Now, you'll see all these material names, and this is a material library, the MTL. And you'll see the waterlightbrew.jpg. Now we're using a PNG, so we're going to point it to the PNG. And the light green, grass green.jpg. Now we're using a BMP image. So we're just going to do BMP. Don't want to mess up the new line. BMP. And yeah, basically do this. Just fill in the file names of your files. It's good to have a majority of one file name. And so basically if you know a texture is transparent, you would point it to the PNG. And if you get an error about it not being in the editor, about not being a texture, that's because you didn't do this MTL file right, if it can't find a texture. Now save it and just X out of it. Now in the next tutorial, I show how to import it, but I'm just going to give you a brief preview of stuff right here. So you can just follow along as I import our model and see how the model works in game. Now I'm going to replace Bob on Battlefield because I can. Now in another tutorial I showed how I can play around with the scene. And now let's change the 3D model. Import level model. I'm going to open the model I exported. If I open it, it should be able to find all the textures and all. And just look around the model and see if all the planes are here and if everything's working all right. It should be. And if I'll get more into collision types in another tutorial, but for now I'm just going to give these their own numbers. Now the scale is way too big, so let me adjust that real quick. And if you see something not look right in this model, like a plane that's missing or a plane that's like stretched across and bigger than it is, if you see that, that's because you textured a white plane and not the dark gray one. And so since it's white, it won't be exported. And so it would just connect to the nearest plane, which would make it look weird. So around the area, if you see something messed up, look around that area in SketchUp and remove the textures in that area and make sure that it's dark gray, otherwise it may look weird. Now you'll see in the model that it's flipped. Like, if you remember how we flipped it, that was to make it so it renders correct in the editor, in which this case it did. Now obviously that edge touches the axes, and we made it so that edge does touch the axes. It's weird how the OBJ export works, so that's why we need to flip it. But you'll see that everything is correct. Let me just assign types and hit import. And everything's looking good. Now, I'll see our model here in the game. For a second, I'm just going to ignore all these random objects. I'm just going to remove this chain chomp though, because chain chomps tend to cause problems sometimes. Now, let me just do a quick CPLS check and make sure we're all good with these. If you don't know what I'm doing right now, don't worry about it. I'll explain that in the importing video, which is next in the playlist. Basically, I'm assigning each texture its own kind of collision. And so for dummy's sake, I'm just going to remove where are you, King Bob-omb, and star marker for star 1. And I'm just going to put a star on top of this fountain. Let me just remove that because it's in the way. So add object, power star. I'm just going to put it on that top of this fountain here. I'm setting the star number to 1. And let me just put it up a little high. And now let me make it so you will actually spawn on the platform here. You just need to find the entrances. Oh look, there they are. Let me make them face correctly. Now normally I would move 1, 2, and 3 for the correct entrances to spawn, like for all the other characters, but for now it's just Yoshi I'm after, so I'm just going to go ahead and do this. And let's go test real quick if the model works by opening the SMU. And you'll see that the model works just fine. And except for one problem, you'll notice we can just fall right through the pillars. And the reason for that is, let's look at the collision map. Nope, wrong one. You'll see that the pillars are just missing, and a lot of planes are just missing after all. You'll be like, what? Why are they missing? I mean, in the model they're there, in the 3D model, and that's because sometimes the editor will remove planes from the collision map. So let's re-import the model, assign the correct scale from earlier, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, assign types, and you see where it says drop faces, then this amount, we need to change this to 0. That way it will drop no faces. It drops faces to save space because you really can't have more than 5,000 faces in your model, because the game tends to not like that. So then it drops very small faces, ones that usually tend not to be important. But things about cylinders are, they use a lot of small faces. And so you actually can't use too many cylinders in your level or circular things because they actually use a lot of faces. So even though there may be like 1 here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, etc., these cylinders themselves can add up to like 10 or 20, depending, or 30 even, depending on the size of the cylinder. So I'm just going to import it, and then do a quick save. And now let's look at the KCL map, and you'll see that no faces are missing. And just remember that when you go to the importing tutorial, if you're wondering why your model won't work. You can see we can now not go through the pillar, and it just works correctly. Everything should be working good. I think I set up the water right. Now let me climb up on this. And you can see that everything works. And basically that's it. That's how you get how to model your own models, and I'll go more in depth about importing, but basically that's all you need to know. Don't forget to remember to export only the back faces and to texture only the back faces. And also remember to double check your work and edit the textures correctly. Make sure everything is indexed. If you have like 1 or 2 textures not indexed, it may be okay, but they may appear glitchy in your game. So this has been another tutorial, and I hope you enjoyed.